My name is Steve Arrowood, and I've been an educator for 20 years, working in private education and with public education schools and districts and regions around the world, specifically in an area called accelerated learning, which is really a compilation or a collection of a number of different best teaching practices that have been proven through educational neuroscience to be effective. Now, some of the strategies that accelerated learning and the educators in my particular field have used have really been around for a long time, and some of those strategies that we use as teachers are actually changed over time based on different research. One of the things that's coming under a lot of change in recent years, just because it's getting more publicity and press through some articles and educational journals as well as books and video, is the idea of what is commonly called learning styles, also sometimes called learning modalities. But really what we're talking about is sensory modalities, the way that we sense the world around us. And there is a lot of myth, and there's also a lot of truth in what they are. First of all, they exist. We do take in information in a variety of different ways. The primary three are seeing it, hearing it, and using our body in order to take in or learn information. I use my body if I'm learning how to play soccer or how to draw or how to delicately, put just the right amount of fluid in when I'm in a chemistry course. I use my sight when I'm, studying tables like the periodic elements, and when I'm looking at formulas in math and learning to read and seeing new vocabulary. And I use my auditory sense when I'm learning to debate or use conversation or listen to lecture, things like that. If I take a survey, I can then end up with a preference of, based on the survey, of different things that I would rather hear, rather see, and rather do with my body. But what's important to recognize is that this is just a survey, and every survey's different wording can end up with different results, and the results even change when people have been tested with the same survey from month to month or year to year. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that we all experience the world and we learn in the world in all different ways, unless we have some sort of physical handicap or challenge, like I'm blind. But we all have these different senses of taking in information. So, what is actually true and what's false? Well, we have different ability levels within these different modalities. So, I might be able to recognize patterns better in a quilt or in a blanket if I was learning about ancient native peoples, arts and crafts. I might be able to recognize those things faster than somebody else, than another student in my class. That means that in that particular area of pattern recognition and color recognition, that my visual sense is stronger than my fellow student. Likewise, he might actually be able to hear different composers like Mozart or Bach or Elvis Presley very much quicker and easier than I can. So in that particular instance, in that area, his auditory actual ability might be higher than mine. Does that mean that he should be taught in an auditory way and I should be taught in a visual way? No, it just means that we have different ability levels in those specific tasks. Are you with me so far? Okay. So some of the research that's actually been coming out is saying, we actually do not have personal learning modalities that we should be taught in. Regardless of surveys and what I think I am, the label that I love giving myself, because we love having labels about ourselves. It makes it easier to give ourselves a handle. Oh, I'm a visual learner. I need to see things visually. it totally falls apart under scientific testing. The research says absolutely not. What's important as educators, and this is where things get important, as an educator, what's important is that I teach my content in a way that best supports the content dynamically. So if I can use both visual, auditory, and kinesthetic ways and tactile ways with my content, then I should. And I should do it often. But if the content doesn't support it, if the content, if we're studying geography and mapping, and we're learning how to map, then it is very, very challenging to explain to someone where Iraq is on a map using just my words or the shape of Iraq. That is a content or curriculum that needs visual. And I couldn't do it kinesthetically either by walking around the room. Now, I could find elements of auditory and kinesthetic to add into the curriculum that could, help everybody feel more engaged because the instruction or the teaching that I'm giving is then more dynamic. But the content requires that we go visual. So what's important is that our students learn how to play or learn how to experience, sense information in all of the different ways, because it makes them able to take in more information and then think about it and understand it better. But if we just play to one modality with students, then they lose the opportunity to improve their senses. And that's what we're talking about is senses, not how well we learn. Because, and here's another important point, learning in school is most often about making meaning. It's not about how easily or quickly we can see or hear or use our body. It's about being able to make meaning and then produce results after we've thought about it, considered it, worked on it, done homework on it, taken tests on it, presentations on it. It's then how we're able to then reproduce or reassemble that information in our head into new ways of application. That's learning. Able to speak about it in my own words. That's learning, and that's about making meaning. And that does not have anything to do with how well I can see or hear or do it. Those are just the ways that I can experience the world or sense the world to take in information. So do you see what I'm saying? It's partially true. We do have different learning modalities, but it's not, number one, it's not how dominant we are in different ones. Unless we're doing a purely visual task, or a purely auditory task, like hearing an accent. If I'm hearing an accent, then that is purely auditory. It's oral, A-U-R-A-L, oral or auditory, as in I'm just hearing it. I'm not making meaning about it. I'm just like, that is an Irish accent. That is a Danish accent speaking in English, etc., etc. That's American, and so on and so on. But again, that's not making meaning. That's just recognizing based on my auditory ability. It's recognition, not making meaning. Does that make sense? Anyway, there's a lot of great research and reading and people who are far more eloquent and graceful than I am on the topic. Educational neuroscientists do spend a lot of time looking at learning styles. I encourage you to go online and check out some of the credible information that comes from education journals that actually cite the exact research that they did for the project to get the results they did about learning modalities or learning styles, as they're called. So, Eric Mazur from Harvard University, Daniel Willingham from Virginia is also a professor. About Kids Health is a newsletter that also addresses learning styles. There's a number of different resources, even back to the historical, like Read It Done, and going back into Arter and Jenkins from the late 70s, talking about differentiated instruction. So please, this is not a challenge that we don't learn in different ways. It's a challenge in terms of put forth by scientists saying, there's no proof that one person actually learns and makes meaning better than another person based on their preferences in study and ability. be they visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. What is important is that we differentiate our instruction, use as many as we can, and then really work to make the content as strong as possible. Hopefully that's clear. There's an attached document of a way to introduce the concept to students, but really this is a teacher-centric type of tool.